to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was A-Class Nissans, and our first race was at the Suzuka Full Circuit. As we run into the first corner, there was a Datsun that had come from somewhere in the mid-pack with phenomenal acceleration and ended up in the lead. There was some chaos further back, as there often is with this first corner. It's a very fast first corner. It's also quite a wide one, and everybody tries to go 3 wide, and that doesn't often work. Anyway, on the most part, yeah, people had survived. I think there had been a spinner at some point as another Datsun runs a little bit wide through the S's. However, we had all survived relatively unscathed as the train snakes its way through this first corner. These corners are pretty hard to overtake on, so it often relies on somebody running a bit wide and making a mistake for you to get past. An R32 Skyline, I believe that is, has a big dive, very brave dive, up the inside. That's a tough place to overtake. But he manages to get the move done and has moved up into third. Further back, there was the most magnificent of wings on the back of a Skyline. I'm pretty sure that was stolen off a plane and has been welded onto the back of a car. I don't think a wing that big does very. I don't know. That is an almighty wing. Anyway, we follow a Nissan Micra as something does some rally crossing. There was a bit of rally crossing on this circuit. We run up towards. I hate these corners. These are probably some of my least favourite corners. It's Spoon, isn't it, this one? My least favourite corners on any racetrack. I am terrible through here. And the Micra does seem to be struggling. Gets up the inside of a Datsun and just adds a twitch. The tiny wheelbase of this car, I'm presuming it was probably rear-wheel drive converted or perhaps four-wheel drive. By the looks of how unstable it was, I would guess it was rear-wheel drive. The Micra is just twitchy and can't really do very much. The Datsun is very quick, has a look up the inside, but can't really get very far alongside. There's me off in the background. I got spun off, clattered a wall. Micra's on the inside, manages to outbrake the Datsun, gets the position, and then has an almighty twitch and promptly falls off the road and loses the position again. It was all changed further back. Often we have the most action goes on for sort of around 2nd or 3rd or 4th, that kind of area. This race, it was all over sort of 8th and 9th and 10th and further back. Yeah, it was an almighty struggle for most of the race over these positions between a couple of Datsuns. There was a Micra and the almighty wing was involved, ready to pick up the pieces if anything went wrong. The Datsun 510 was one of the better handling, one of the more stable cars through the corners, but the problem was it lacked a lot of straight line speed, and while there are quite a lot of fast corners here at Suzuka, there are also quite a lot of straights, so if you are lacking in straight line speed, it certainly can cause a little bit of a problem. The Micras in the background are getting very close to the Fairlady Z, but look at the gap that the Fairlady can pull on the straights. It's got so much straight line speed, makes it very, very hard to overtake. It's cruised up to the back of the 510, is going sideways around a corner that's normally not a problem for most cars, has a dive on the inside but doesn't have the handling. The Datsun 510 can keep it through the corners. The Micra's there, the almighty wing is getting involved as well, but the Skyline didn't have the straight line speed either. As you will see, he was up the inside of the Micra, but by the time the camera pans around here, you will see the Micra is gone. The Fairlady Z is flowing past the 510 as well, and the Micra will appear. There we go, the Micra can soar past as well in a straight line. Everybody gets stopped for 130R, which is a good thing. Everyone gets stopped there. The ominous shadow of the almighty wing has appeared in the background. I'm pretty sure that shadow is created just by the wing. That's all it needs. But in the end, the Datsun 510 has enough cornering grip, enough brakes to keep position. After my little outing into the barriers, I caught up to this little train. I was joining in the fray with my almighty 300ZX. My car was built more for straight line speed. I had about 500 and something horsepower in this thing. Made it a little bit of a handful through the corners and not that good on the brakes. I thought about having a dive here. That promptly changed my mind. The Sylvia ran a little bit wide. I couldn't really do anything. I just don't have the grip. However, I do have the speed and lots of the speed. And sure enough, on the acceleration, I can get past before we ever even reach the corner. You can look at the size of the gap I can pull on a fairly small acceleration zone. The Sylvia very nearly tries to kill me as he outbrakes himself a little bit, but we all got away with it. In the end, at the front, it was going to be an R32 2 Skyline, I believe it is, that was to take the win. To be honest, it wasn't the most exciting of races in the end. There was a couple of changes position for a second, but that was just because somebody fell off the road. Yeah, not the most exciting of races in the end. Further back positions as well, calmed down towards the end. Yeah, not the most exciting of races, but it was won by Skyline. I worked my way back up to about 9th or something. We moved on to our second race at the Catalonia National Circuit. The first corner here can be interesting. It's a very, very tight hairpin, and for the cars further back, because it goes downhill, it can be very, very hard to see what's going on. The cars at the back didn't have too much problems. The car in the middle, it kind of all got a little bit chaotic. You can't fit 5 cars wide through there, and unfortunately a couple of Datsuns ended up facing the wrong way. Yeah, you really can't fit 5 cars through that, but it's a pretty big struggle fitting 2 cars wide as everybody tries to go in 2s. That's not a good place to be. Yeah, I'm not sure how they all got away through that bit. Unfortunately, they didn't get away through the next bit, as a 370Z gets a clobbering from pretty much everything around him and promptly ends up broken, which is a shame. We come up towards the hairpin for the first time, and yeah, there was plenty of... You can't actually see the 2 leaders. You can just about see us in the distance. We had pulled out a massive margin on this opening lap as everybody squabbled over position. The Silvia gets a big slide on, allowing the Skyline to go past. The Skyline is now chasing after another group of 3 vehicles, and you will notice the 240 that's leading this group is in 3rd. The 2 Datsuns that were facing the wrong way at the start of the lap were now pretty much in the train that was behind 3rd place, so them ended up facing the wrong way. They didn't really lose a huge amount of time as the Fair Lady Z and the 370Z, I think that one is, had a bit of a coming together. It all gets a little bit close, and the poor Datsun 510, another one, was struggling with the straight line speed as 3 cars saw past him as they head towards the first corner. Of course, they have got to get it stopped, and the Datsun is going to be better around the turns, but having that little straight line speed can make it a real pain, because you've got to do all the work through these next corners, and then the cars just soar past you in a straight line. These 3 were still arguing as they go to go too wide, which is always scary, but they get through okay. The Skyline gets the position, and for me that gets overtaken the evening, because that's terrifyingly hard, going too wide through that section. At the front, as I said, we had pulled out a massive lead by now. While everybody was arguing over 3rd, me and another Skyline had vanished up the road. The Skyline was very good through the corners, but my Fair Lady Z was rather quick when it came to the straight line. You saw the size of the gap that we had coming onto the straight, and by the first corner I am up the inside and can get my car stopped. That's the advantage you have when you've got the car with the more straight line speed. Overtaking is just that little bit easier when you have a long straight. Of course, now comes the scary bit for me. I've got to try and defend through these next corners, and my car doesn't have the brakes, it doesn't have the grip of the Skyline, but I do have the acceleration. I can keep the position at the top of the hill. My main concern is I need to get a good run off this chicane, because if I don't, the Skyline will have me into the hairpin. However, I get a good enough run, I have enough speed, I have enough acceleration to get far enough ahead, so there's not very much the Skyline can do as we come into the hairpin. Further back, and there was a train going on again. I'm not even sure. I was trying to keep up with what was going on here. I was failing. They changed position. I think this is for 3rd. I don't really know. Either way, the Fair Lady Z got the position. The 510 also got the position. The Skyline lost out a little bit there, but the poor Datsun just didn't have the straight line speed. The 240 can come straight back at him and get past. Of course, he has got to get it stopped into the first corner. A very big slide from the 240, just trying to get his car stopped. He doesn't have the grip or the brakes of the vehicles around him. Yeah, there was a pretty big train going on around this section. Ignore the slightly glitchy lights from the Datsun. Don't ask me. I'm not entirely sure. They come up towards... This is a scary, scary corner at the best of times, and the 240 is really struggling to get his car turned. The Datsun's having a look, but it's so hard. It's so hard to get past a vehicle through here, especially when you're trying to pass a vehicle that is rather tricky to drive. You don't really go side by side through some of the fastest corners on the track. The 240 was far enough ahead to defend in the hairpin. He just doesn't have the grip to get turned, and the 510 can do the cutback. The 240's also got to worry about the car behind the Skyline, and sure enough, he just hasn't got the grip, runs a little bit wide, and the Skyline can get up the inside as well. Going towards this final section, the Skyline's going to make another pass, possibly, as he tries to get around the Datsun. It's pretty tough and very narrow trying to overtake through here. However, the Skyline manages to get the move done. The Datsun had to take such a tight line through there that he compromised himself on the exit as they come onto the straight and runs a little bit wide, and the 240 has plenty of straight line speed to move up a position. The white and blue Skyline had a little bit of a spin, or more like got assistance in having a spin, and was now trying to work his way back up through the field. The poor Datsun was doing his best and slightly breaking physics. Don't mind that. The Datsun was breaking physics throughout this race. Was doing his best to try and fight these cars. He just had no straight line speed when it came to the sort of two really long straights. The Skyline is trying his best to defend through these final sections with this far too shallow a line through there, and can't really do very much about the second part of the corner. However, as they come onto the back straight, we know that the Datsun 510 just struggles, and there is very little he can do. He has a fairly sizable gap back to the Skyline, but it's not going to take long for the Skyline to reel him in, and he's going to pass him before they ever reach the first corner. Of course, the Skyline has still got to get his car stopped. We know the Datsun is better under braking, but going around the outside is quite a long way. The Datsun can take a lot more corner speed. He tries his very best, but he's on the outside for the next corner. If you can keep his footed, if you can keep it going around there, you may end up on the inside of the run up the hill, which he does. The Skyline doesn't quite have enough speed to get in front of him by the top of the hill, and gives him quite a lot of space. Runs a little bit wide, and the Datsun has got his position back, but it'll only be a matter of time before the white and blue Skyline gets past. At the front, and after a bit of a lag incident had slightly slowed me down, I'd fallen back to second and spent a couple of laps catching up to the back of the Skyline, and sure enough, the straight line speed of the Fairlady Z was enough as we run into the first corner. Never completely simple with these passes. I outbrake myself a little bit, run wide. The Skyline's trying to get back on the inside, but he just doesn't quite have the acceleration to get the move done. Again, through the next corners, I've got to be careful that I don't do anything silly. However, I have enough acceleration in all of these cases that I can just about get away with it, and that is the way it was to end. It was a great little battle at the front. In the end, I sort of had a rather large advantage with the straight line speed, made the overtaking look fairly easy. It wasn't. Just keeping up with the Skyline through the corners was a bit of a challenge, but the race at Catalonia had been pretty good fun. We move on to the third and final round at the Twin Ring. I think this is the west version of the circuit. I can never remember which of the shortened layout this one is. Anyway, we run into the first corner. I'd made up quite a number of positions off the start line, thanks to the incredible acceleration of my 300ZX. All manner of chaos was unfolding in front of me, and I was trying to hug the inside and stay out of it, as a couple of 240s and another 300 were getting involved in some bumping. I got away with it. I breathed a rather large sigh of relief as we came onto the next straight. I wasn't the fastest car here, though. The 240 alongside me was very, very quick in a straight line. The Skyline, not quite so much. I ended up in the 3 wide is scary. I didn't really like being in the middle of them, especially with a car that I didn't really trust the brakes on. I nearly lost both the positions, but I had enough acceleration to get up the inside through the next corner. The Skyline has to go the long way round, but he has enough grip to do it. I'm not entirely sure what happened to the 240. I think that may have ended up slightly wide on the dirt. The Skyline was pushing his car rather to the limit through these next corners. I tried to brave it around the outside. In the end, the understeer from the Skyline ended up bumping into the front of me. Skyline ended up on the dirt, and I lost a position to the other 300ZX. The car in front had a bit of a wonky line. I'm not sure where he was going through that corner. I gave him a little bit of a bump. We were trying to escape from the mad horde of cars behind us. It was a scary sight looking back. Onto all of that as we run into the final corner. I didn't really have the cornering grip or the brakes of the other Fairlady. However, I did have the straight line speed and quite a lot of it as we run on to the start-finish straight. However, he goes very, very defensive, and while I can breeze past him in a straight line, I just don't have the brakes, and going around the outside here is rather a lung shot, and I can't really get away with it. It was equally entertaining at the front, as we had a Skyline, one of the classic Skylines, trying to fend off a Nissan Sentra and a Nissan 350Z. The Sentra outbrakes himself, and the 350Z gets a fairly simple pass back. The Sentra is trying to do a cutback. It is a little bit too far back. again, this is another one of these cases of straight line speed versus handling. The 350Z, one of the better handling vehicles we had here. The two cars around him, the Sentra and the Skyline, were much faster in a straight line, but as you could see from the Skyline, rather a handful through the corners. The Skyline is sliding absolutely everywhere, and the 350Z gets a fairly simplistic pass. In the end, the Skyline was just out sideways, and when you're going sideways, you're not going forward. And yeah, that will slow you down. The Sentra gets alongside the Skyline as well. But then the Skyline has its party piece, which is a lot of straight line speed. An awful lot of straight line speed as they run into the final corner. The Skyline gets back past the Sentra. Me and the other 300ZX were on the way to join in the fun as we both passed a Datsun that was doing a little bit of rallycross in the background. And the 350Z's lead was to be fairly short-lived as the Skyline just flies past it in a straight line. The Sentra's pretty quick as well as they come into the first corner. The 350Z's trying to be brave around the outside first. This tough doing that. It's a long way to go around the outside. The Skyline is struggling for grip though through these next corners. The Sentra pops up and almost gets the move done on a 350Z. Both of the 300ZXs. Nissan, could you not call all of your car numbers? It makes it really hard for me commentating. The Sentra's gone to play in the dirt, and the two fair ladies are having a bit of an argument as we come on to the back straight. The Nissan Skyline is breathing a sigh of relief, having vanished off into the distance. I end up trying to go around the outside to the corner where I can't really do it because I don't have enough handling, and have to settle for fourth at the moment. This sort of scrap of the front was by far the most exciting thing going on. Unfortunately, further back was rather laggy, so I couldn't really show very much of what was going on there. Fair Lady Z goes right around the outside of the 350 in the final corner, and then has the straight line speed to get the move done. A little bit close there on the changing of sides. They got away with it, no harm done. And the Fair Lady Z, though, does have to go defensive into the first corner because, as we saw, 350 is very good through the corners, very good on the brakes, has quite a lot of grip. The Skyline's breathing space was about to kind of evaporate thanks to going sideways all over the place. The Skyline did its best, but that car did not look the easiest thing in the world to drive, and while it had monumental straight line speed, as you will see now, yeah, it was a rather big handful through the corners. I was sort of still involved, sitting around in fourth place, doing my best to try and hold on to the back of this group. The Skyline was really struggling now through some of these faster corners. And while he could cut in front of the Fair Lady Z through this bit, he just ran out of grip, understeered off onto the dirt, allowing the 300 past, and the 350Z will get past as well, and the Skyline sideways in the background, and it wouldn't be long before I found a way past as well. The Skyline just spent every corner pretty much going sideways. Yeah, it was quite entertaining here at the front. I will be honest, it was a great little race up here as we came on to the final lap. It was to be one of the 300ZXs that would take the victory. It wasn't a simple race. The top three, we all remained sort of within touching distance of each other. On the final couple of laps, the 350Z really picked up speed, and a couple more, and I'm not sure we would have had the same outcome. Yeah, he really did close on the leader. However, it was to be a victory for the 300ZX, and I was to get a third place. So 2 victories out of 3 for these Fair Lady Zs. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I would say no, there were some good races, and the front anyway in this final race, it was fantastic. It's a shame that further back the replay was really laggy, and I couldn't really show very much because there was quite a bit of lag involved. However, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching. The next FailRace versus the community shall be on Thursday the 8th of March. It shall be starting at 7 PM British summertime. It shall be on Forza 4, and we will be racing cars with 6-cylinder engines. They can be V6s or they can be inline 6s. They can be cars that have been engine swapped to have 6-cylinder engines. However, that is what we are going to be running. I'm not sure. Oh, we're going to be running them in B class as well. Sorry, I'm not sure if there are any leaderboard cars with 6-cylinder engines in B class. However, I'm going to say that if you are a driver who is likely to be at the front of these races, if you've won these races before, you've done very well in these races before, then please don't use a leaderboard car. Be creative, use something interesting, use something different. It's much more fun. We've had some weird and wonderful winners over the previous weeks. It's much more interesting to have a big variety of vehicles turn up to these. If you want to sign up and take part, then you can go to our forums. There will be a link in the description. You find the FailRace versus the community section, and in there will be where you sign up. However, that is it for today. So until next time, goodbye.